Ming is a weak and helpless boy who had his home burned to the ground and his entire family taken from him by the Empire. And several years later, Ming takes over the identity of the son of a prominent family to grow stronger and ultimately get his revenge. But before all that, we have to start at the beginning. Ming has been on the run for 7 years at this point, and several executioners are currently pursuing him through a forest. As he jumps from tree to get away, one of the executioners is starting to wonder who he really is, because an ordinary person wouldn't be able to move so fast. But his boss tells him that even if their target's power is a little above average, he's still only one person, so there's no way you could handle their entire squad in a fight. Eventually, the leader spots some fireworks in the distance. Ming, one of his team members, has spotted the boy, so he starts heading over to assist and take Ming down. Ming runs through the tree branches, but the fireworks have revealed his location, so the executioners are closing in on him. No longer can he hide. And to make matters worse, this forest is home to several dangerous monsters, so Ming has to be very careful about where he lands. Ming tries to swing back into the trees, but an executioner blocks him. Ming receives a kick to the face and falls back to the ground before he even understands what's happening. Now that they have completely surrounded him, the executioners are ready to jump him. Ming refuses to go down without a fight, so as one of the executioners attempts to stab him, he knocks the guy away and steals his blade before stabbing him in the neck with it. Ming was about to do the same to the other executioners when an arrow flew at his head, forcing him to back off. He kicks 2 of the executioners away to create some space, but they keep coming after him, so he parries and dodges their attacks until he finally sees an opportunity to cut them down. Ming thinks he is finally safe, so he bends down and starts looting the guards' bodies to see if he can find anything valuable. However, an arrow suddenly lands next to him and Ming can tell that it's not normal, so he runs away just before the arrow explodes. Ming looks up to see who was responsible for the arrow, and he is shocked to see 2 warriors from the Ministry of Justice here. The 2 are surprised that Ming was able to recognize them, but it makes things easier since you should already know that encountering them means you won't be able to survive. Ming asks why the Ministry of Justice would come after a law-abiding citizen like him, so the warrior reads the charges against Ming. The letter says that 7 years ago Ming's father committed treason against the emperor, so his punishment, his entire family was sentenced to execution. However, Ming managed to escape his fate somehow, so they are here to finish the job. Ming isn't just going to stand by and let them kill him, so he throws some rocks at the warriors to buy some time. But the archer fires several shots at Ming to keep him from escaping, and when Ming tries to run to safety, he is cut off by the barbarian woman and grabbed by the ankle. She's about to slam him into the ground with all her might, but at the last second, Ming uses a special technique to rearrange the bones in his leg, allowing him to escape her grasp. The archer cautions the barbarian to exercise caution, as Ming appears to possess a variety of strategies and his next move remains uncertain. Meanwhile, Ming is barely able to stand. He knows the barbarian is dangerous, but he thinks the archer is more experienced, so he needs to be careful dealing with him. But for now, Ming needs to get back on his feet, so he drinks the health potion he managed to swipe from one of the executioners earlier. The barbarian charges at him, forcing him to retreat, but he still has to worry about the archer, so he can't create much distance. He imbues his blade with some energy as the barbarian lunges at him. She clearly didn't expect him to be so strong, as Ming was able to completely destroy her club during their weapon clash. And while the barbarian is still confused, he's able to sneak up behind her and stab her in the neck. Enraged by his comrade's death, the archer vows to destroy Ming, even if it's the last thing he does. Ming realizes that the archer is using talismans to fight, which indicates that he must be a Kai cultivator. Seeing how terrifying Kai cultivators are, Ming won't run the fade. Ming starts running for his life, but the archer isn't letting him escape, so he activates his lightning skill and kicks Ming 100 meters through the forest. Ming now faces a waterfall's edge with nowhere to escape. The archer lunges forward at Ming, forcing him to jump off the waterfall. But since Ming is going down anyway, he makes sure to take the archer with him. They both end up plunging into the lake below, and once Ming regains his bearings, he tries swimming back up to the surface, but the archer grabs him from behind and tries to strangle Ming. Ming manages to slip free from the archer's grip and gets behind him to lock him in a chokehold. The archer begins struggling to free himself and reaches for his blade in an attempt to cut Ming down, but unfortunately for him, it was out of reach. Soon, the archer succumbs to suffocation and descends to the bottom, while Ming gradually ascends to the top. A little while later, Ming washes up on the shore of a lake. But it looks like he wasn't the only one who washed up here, because 2 old men find a badly injured man propped up against a tree. They are very disappointed because the man looks like he had some decent potential as a cultivator. but with that hole in his chest, even an immortal wouldn't be able to save him. The short one says they can't just let the young master of the Bay family die like this when they were tasked with bringing him to the Savage Ghost sect for his spiritual awakening. The tall one suggests they should just ditch him and run away, but the two of them already took payment from the Bay family, so they'll get hunted down if they run away. Not to mention the fact that to take this job, they both swallowed a heart-relaxing pill that will kill them in 6 months if they don't return to the Bay family to give a report. Without a doubt, the two find themselves in a precarious situation, prompting the tall one to express his frustration. The man's blast hits Ming's hiding rock, and when they realize there's a witness, they try to kill him so he says nothing. However, as the tall one tries to punch a hole through his chest, Ming subconsciously protects himself with an energy shield, something that shocks the two men because Ming's technique is similar to that of the Bai family. They examine Ming's body and find that he has learned some basic energy control techniques and has a solid foundation. Moreover, he looks strikingly similar to the dead young master of the Bays. So the two come up with a plan and tell Ming that they will save him, but only under the condition that he lives under a new identity and does as they say. Ming has no other choice. Ming doesn't really have much of a choice, so he agrees to go along with their scheme, and after healing him, the men begin taking Ming to the Spirit Awakening ceremony. Ming is grateful that the two of them spared his life, but he's worried that if his strength isn't sufficient, then people will find out that he isn't really the young master of the Bai family. The old man assures Ming that he should be alright since the Savage Ghost sect has no record of his face, and as long as he follows the energy control technique that they showed him, he shouldn't have any problems passing the Spiritual Awakening exam. Ming still doesn't understand the exam, so the men explain that it's a ceremony that gathers large amounts of Kai in your body. When the Kai reaches the condensation stage, you can become a spirit disciple and advance your cultivation. The two of them inform Ming that he should be grateful for the great honor of being able to participate in the ceremony. But if the spiritual awakening is so amazing, Ming asks why the two of them haven't awakened their spirits yet. The men look at each other with a bit of sadness in their eyes and tell Ming that you can only awaken your spirit before you turn 20, and it costs an astronomical amount to even register, so old folks like them will never get a chance like that. On top of that, only the 5 major factions know the secret techniques to succeed in a spirit awakening, so it is very dangerous for regular people. They eventually arrive at the exam site, so the men drop Ming off at the entrance, but before he heads in, they try to convince him to take a heart-relaxing pill, claiming that it will help protect him. However, Ming isn't an idiot, so he knows the pill is really a poison that will kill him if he doesn't fulfill their requests. He asks the men if they really trusted him so little, but given the fact that Ming is a wanted criminal in the Empire, they're a little worried that he might run away halfway through the exam. They assure Ming that even if he takes the pill, everything will be alright as long as he succeeds with the Spirit Awakening, but he doesn't really believe them. However, it's not like he has a choice here because if he doesn't do as they say, they will expose him as an outlaw and he'd be hunted down again. So he swallows the pill and heads inside for the exam. Inside, Ming encounters several powerful cultivators from prominent families, and many people appear to recognize the young master of the Bay family. Although all the rumors seem to say that the young master of the Bay family is a useless bastard, so Ming realizes his public image isn't good. Just then, the instructor for the exam, Fong, arrives, and he tells everyone that you will be in charge of leading them to the Spirit Awakening ceremony, so anyone who wants to participate should follow him. All the participants start walking, but suddenly, several of them begin to choke. Realizing something is wrong, Ming jumps onto the ceiling to analyze the situation. There are dozens of ghosts picking off the participants, but when one of the participants goes to ask Fran for help, he tells them that this is the Savage Ghost sect, so they'd better be able to deal with a few specters on their own. Most of the stronger cultivators here are able to defeat the ghosts fairly easily, so it's time for them to move on to the next phase. But along the way, Ming is approached by this guy. He proposes an alliance with Ming to tackle the next phase, and Ming sees no reason to refuse. Although the guy is a little suspicious, Ming keeps his guard up while they're walking through the tunnel. He keeps looking around in case of an ambush, but the guy he formed an alliance with tells him there's no need to worry about anyone sneaking up on him since everyone else has already progressed to the next stage. And anyone who's still in the first stage by now definitely isn't strong enough to be an issue for them. However, there are only a limited number of spots available for the next phase, which means that the man truly intends to betray Ming. He steps back as some purple energy wraps around Ming, and once he is restrained, the guy explains that this is the second stage of the exam, the sacrificial cage. As the name implies, someone needs to be sacrificed here for the other to move on with the test. And unless you're a high-level cultivator, that purple energy will drain your power until you eventually die. Ming is furious and asks the man if he thinks the Bei family will let him live after killing their young master. But the guy says this is just how the game goes. The spiritual awakening ceremony is already dangerous to begin with, so anyone who comes here has accepted the fact that they may fail and die at any point. And besides, the Bei family is on the verge of being expelled, so there's nothing they could do about it anyway. Ming is actually kind of relieved to hear that death is a normal part of the exam because that means he doesn't have to worry about consequences if he accidentally kills someone. He gets back on his feet and begins charging up his energy until he eventually breaks for the energy chains. The man is terrified because he knows the real Bai Kongshan could never pull off something like that, so he figures out that Ming is an imposter. Ming is surprised that the man could deduce so much in such a short time, but it doesn't matter because he won't survive long enough to tell anyone the truth. The man is starting to panic, but he doesn't want to die here, so he's getting ready to fight Ming. However, he suddenly feels a sharp pain in his hand, and it becomes very difficult for him to move. Ming reveals that he had poisoned the man in advance the moment they first met because he was worried that something like this might happen. The man lunges at Ming in anger, but because of his carelessness, he's caught by the purple chains and he is completely drained of his energy. A few moments later, Ming continues through the tunnel until he eventually arrives at the exit, where many other cultivators are waiting. Fong tells everyone that they were lucky to have made it this far. The true test is yet to begin because this is where they will undergo their spiritual awakening. This arena was made for multiple groups to awaken at once, so they must prepare. Ming is still a little shocked that over half of the initial participants have already died, but it looks like there are even greater risks with the actual awakening. A few of the participants notice that there are already many people seated inside the energy circles, so Fong explains that those are the members of the Savage Ghost sect who have been nurturing their spiritual energy since childhood. Fong reserved 3 of the 5 circles for his sect, so he tells the other participants they must use the leftovers. The participants are outraged because their families paid good money for them to undergo this awakening, so it's not fair for Fong to monopolize a majority of the resources. But Fong doesn't care about fairness at all. He makes the rules, and if they don't like how he allocated resources, they can leave. The participants have no choice but to go along with Fong's orders, so they all squeeze into the final 2 circles and get ready for the spiritual awakening to begin. Once everyone has settled in, Ming notices a beautiful girl sitting across from him, and when she looks his way for a moment, he begins to fall in love. But then he remembers that he's a wanted man who was forced into a potentially deadly ceremony, so love isn't a high priority for him. The girl is surprised that her spiritual charms didn't work on Ming, and she is starting to take an interest in him. But there's no time for distractions right now, as the spiritual awakening is about to begin. Each pathway is filled with dense liquid energy, so when all the circles have been filled, the formations are activated to enshroud incredibly dense spiritual energy, which they must absorb within seconds. Several cultivators fall to the ground, unable to overcome the incredible pressure. However, the more skilled cultivators don't seem to be having much trouble. Since Ming is new to the world of cultivation, he's struggling a little, but with the energy control techniques he was taught, he's eventually able to stabilize his spirit. Now all that's left is for him to absorb as much extra energy as possible so he can open his meridians. Meanwhile, the 8 ghost sect leaders meet to monitor the candidates' progress. This sect leader is quite impressed with the performance of the participants this year, but he heard that the other leaders have a few people in mind whom they would like to recruit. He heard that Shu and Lin got into an argument over a particular disciple and even arranged a duel to decide who would get him. Lin pleads her case and reminds the sect leader that she was the one who discovered the Kalin nightmare body, so she has the right to take her as her disciple. All the branch leaders are shocked to find it hard to believe that someone here really has a nightmare body. But there's no reason for them to doubt Lin's testimony because moments later the nightmare body is manifested right before their eyes. It only has 6 veins, but the sect leader thinks the girl's mass control would benefit their sect. Guy is asked by the sect leader if he is targeting any of their faction's disciples. A guy tells him he doesn't really want to compete with the rest of them for disciples, so he's fine with choosing a few of the foreign awakeners. The secular asks him if he's sure about this, since even if the foreigners manage to awaken, it will most likely only end up with 3 veins, which is relatively low in comparison to the ghost faction's disciples. Guai is aware of that, but his branch doesn't have as many resources as the others, so all he asks is that if any of the foreigners are fortunate enough to awaken, the rest of his fellow branch leaders shouldn't steal them away from him. Just then, Lin gets everyone's attention and points to Ming because his cultivation looks like it has the potential to reach the legendary 9 vein. The sect leader looks closer and he's impressed with Ming's energy levels, but unfortunately, that's where his interest ends because he says Ming doesn't know the proper channeling techniques to stabilize his energy absorption, so his body won't be able to handle it. As the unfortunate Ming people showed, when someone can't handle the energy they're absorbing, their body explodes. Ming's body is beginning to feel the effects of the energy he is absorbing. So if he seals his spirit veins to hold it in. However, a trick like that will only postpone the inevitable. Ming will eventually die. When Jay, a foreign participant, unlocks the 9-vein spirit, everyone's attention is on him. And guys, rather please, because he already called dibs on all foreign candidates and it worked out well for him. However, all of a sudden, the final branch leader, Lei, shows up and tells everyone that Zai is his nephew, so he's going to take him on as a disciple. He makes the argument that he is already familiar with Zai's thunder attribute, so he would be the best teacher for him. We are disappointed that such a talented disciple is being taken from him. But since Zai is lazy and a few, he agrees to let him go. But he asked everyone to agree that they would let him keep any of the remaining foreign awakeners. The sect leader supports Bu's requests, and the branch leaders have no objections, so he should have no more issues. However, a few moments later, another participant awakens and exceeds all expectations, shocking everyone. His vein count rises all the way up to 9, but it doesn't stop there. It keeps going until the participant reaches 12 spirit veins. And this is almost unheard of. Let's swiftly remind everyone that he made the first call. However, the sect leader, feeling defeated, asserts his authority and declares that he will be mentoring the 12-year-old participant. Bui is sad, but he can't oppose the sect leader. He must therefore choose one disciple from the remaining candidates. Bui isn't expecting much since after so many promising candidates have already awakened their spirit, it's not likely for another amazing talent to bloom. But he tries to remain optimistic. As he looks out into the arena, he spots Ming still working hard to contain his energy and Goliath's entreat because he was sure Ming would have exploded by now. The challenge Ming is facing is that he has enough control to manifest 9 spirit veins, but his core isn't developed enough to contain them all, so he is getting overwhelmed. Ming doesn't want to give up like that, so he won't disperse energy to fit his core. If his core can't handle all 9 veins, then he decides that he's going to use his spirit power to compress the veins until they fit. No one has ever done something like this before, and honestly, Ming isn't sure whether it will work or not, but he eventually manages to pull it off. After the ceremony concludes, the teachers instruct the students to wait for their assignment as disciples. Most of the others who manage to awaken that spirit have veins that are long and thin, but because of Ming's unique method, even though he only has 3 spirit veins, the veins are massive. A few minutes later, he comes down to take the foreign awakeners that the others didn't want, and he asks his assistant Shai to lead them all to his branch. They eventually arrive at a portal where they will officially begin their training as disciples, but immediately after crossing through to the other side, all the disciples faint, leaving Ming as the last one standing. An old man in a chair suddenly speaks up, and he says he's impressed that Ming didn't faint like the others. Ming thinks this must be some kind of trap, but the old man assures him that he's not in danger. The energy inside the temple is so dense that most newcomers cannot handle it and faint immediately. If they are here looking for techniques to learn, he suggests that they should take the levitation, basic fire, and basic wind spells. Ming accepts the man's suggestion, but he wonders why he is only allowed to use these scrolls. The man warns him that most of the scrolls here are too advanced for beginners, so he had better not do anything reckless. Ming can't do anything about it because only those chosen by the branch leaders can access the highest level of scrolls. The old man tells Ming it's his own fault for being a weak 3 spirit vein loser. But then again, he realizes Ming has a lot of mental power for someone who only has 3 spirit veins, so he decides to give him a test. He pulls out a crystal and asks Ming to channel his energy into it so he can assess his strength. But before he does so, Ming can tell that the old man isn't a positive person, so he doesn't want to reveal all his cards yet. He decides to only use 1/3 of his power, but even this is enough to shock the old man. He's never seen such strong mental power in a newbie, and he can tell that Ming will go far as a cultivator, so he offers him a special cultivation technique. The original version was written in ancient Kaming Chinese, but this bamboo version is one that he personally translated. Ming asked the old man if he could see the original version, but the old man got offended and said Ming would never be able to understand something he personally had to spend years just to translate. He tells him that technique will get him all the way up to the middle stage of mastery with no bottlenecks, something that even the faction's secret technique can't accomplish. But if he doesn't think it's good enough for him, then the old man will gladly take it back. Ming apologizes and says he graciously accepts the old man's gift, but before he leaves, the man warns him not to tell anyone about this. Otherwise, he will have to face deadly consequences. Meanwhile, in a cave near the sect, two of the Spirit Awakeners are meeting with one another and one asks the other how many foreign Spirit Awakeners managed to survive. Aside from the two of them, the others are Zele and the Bai family's young master. But he thinks there's something suspicious about Bai because he's widely known as the useless son who was sent here because his family didn't want to have to deal with him, and someone like this could never survive the Spirit Awakening. They decide to test him to see if he's the same person, but they must be careful not to blow their cover. They are here on a mission from the Ministry of Justice, and their job is to infiltrate the Savage Ghost faction's inner circle so they can't afford any mistakes. Meanwhile, Ming has locked himself away in a cabin so he can be in his training. He still doesn't trust Old Man Rand's cultivation technique since he doesn't seem like the kind of person to do something out of the kindness of his heart. But he has no choice but to go along with it if he wants to increase his power quickly. A few months go by and it's time for the new cultivators to return to the main complex for evaluation. Once Ming and the others arrive, they head over to meet with her, and she asks them how their cultivation is going. The others say they haven't made much progress since no one has been guiding them, so they have to slowly teach themselves. They asked Ming how his cultivation is going, and in all honesty, he has been doing much better than the others. However, he doesn't want to draw too much attention to himself, so he tells them that he is struggling just as much as they are. Ming looks around and notices that there aren't many people here, so he asks Shai if this is everyone from the Drain branch, and sadly, yeah, this is all the branch has to offer. Shai explains that this branch is the most neglected of the 8, so the members are lucky to even participate in a tournament like this. He tells everyone that they need to try and win as many rewards as possible to help speed up their cultivation journey, and their eyes all light up at the mention of rewards. They ask what rewards she is talking about, so he says he knows there should be who you want pills available that can increase cultivation speed. But aside from that, he's not sure what the other rewards could be. In any case, he tells everyone to do their best because the term is about to begin. Shortly after, the branch leader arrives and gives a little speech telling everyone that the path of cultivation thrives in diligence, so lazy people will never succeed. But just as he says this, the laziest MF imaginable comes crashing out of the sky. This is Yu, and he's one of the masters here. But he is late because he spent last night drinking and has a massive hangover. Once Su composes himself, he warns all the students not to be lazy like him. Otherwise, he will beat them up. However, the reason he is here is to help assess the students' cultivation levels, and if they manage to impress him, he is prepared to reward them generously. The students don't seem excited after Zu's announcement, so he decides to show them what he is offering and summons several gourds. He tells everyone that these are the rewards for performing well in the tournament. And in case they can't already tell, the liquid inside these gourds has the same effect as ACU and pill. It increases the speed of one's cultivation and raises their mental power quickly. So everyone is excited for a chance to prove themselves. Now the term is soon beginning, and the newbies are set to go up first. The branch leader chooses Fong and Chang, 2 of the direct disciples, to battle the 3 new disciples. But they are reminded that this is just a friendly match between fellow disciples, so they have to stop once they've made their point. Ming is surprised that they are having him compete against direct disciples so soon, and Fong seems to be enjoying this whole situation because it gives him a chance to beat down the pathetic 3 Spirit Vein losers. His comments make the others frustrated. They think they can take Fong since it's 3-on-1. But once the fighting actually starts, Fong completely dominates the overweight opponent. The girl tries to assist him by attacking Fang with her wind blade, but it does absolutely no damage to him. And now that he has turned his attention toward her, he starts charging forward with harmful intent. Ming knows there's no way the girl will survive getting plowed over with such force, so he uses his levitation technique to lift her out of the way so they can all regroup. The leaders are really impressed with Ming's quick thinking, and Guy thinks it's unfortunate that someone as imaginative as Ming only has 3 spirit veins. Feng is annoyed that Ming interfered with his attacks, so he targets Ming next. But even though his cultivation is meant to be several times higher than Ming's, he can't keep up with him at all, so all his attacks end up getting dodged. Ming then uses the wind-slash technique, but while this version is definitely stronger than the girl's, it's still no match for Feng's brute force, so he smashes through it and charges at Ming again. The others see that Ming is putting up a good fight, so they decide to join in as well and start hitting Feng with wind slashes to distract him while Ming sneaks in 1 or 2 good hits. The leaders are once again in awe of Ming's adaptability because he is perfectly executing hit and run tactics to compensate for his inferior strength. If he and the others can keep this pace, then sooner or later he's going to run out of energy, and it will be a victory. A few moments later, he ends up falling to his knees, and the shabby person thinks this means he has finally run out of energy. But instead of just using his ranged fireball attack, he decides to run into butt whooping range, and guess what? The shabby one gets a whooping. You now target the girl again and backhand her as if she had just served him cold chicken. Someone is the only one left standing. Ming says your method of taking out the chubby boy isn't from the ghost sack before he attacks. This startles you because he is worried his cover might have been blown, and Ming takes the opportunity to punch him square in the chest before immediately surrendering, because he knows he can't beat you in a fair one-on-one. You angrily walk up to Ming and accuse him of cheating by distracting him in the middle of the fight. However, Ming points out that you did the same thing when he pretended to be hurt to trick the chubby one into attacking. You turn to the leaders and ask them to grant him a rematch with Ming so he can settle the score with him. However, the leaders tell him to shut up and begin scolding you for being so careless because if this had been a real fight, Ming's punch could have seriously hurt him. They tell him to just accept the way things turned out and reflect on his actions so he doesn't make the same mistake again. You miss my choice but to obey the leader's instructions. He is now certain that Ming isn't the real boy, so he is determined to find out what he is hiding. Meanwhile, Ming is also suspicious of you because he feels like he's seen his martial arts before. He knows it's not one of the ghost faction's techniques, but he doesn't remember the details. Why tell the three that they should rest for a moment to regain their strength, because after this they are going up against Xiao Feng, and he will be just as tough as you were. Feng decides to intimidate them a little, so he begins warming up and uses a wind slash that's so powerful that it scares the other two into quitting immediately. Now Ming is the only one who will be facing Feng, but he doesn't plan to back down, so he tells the leaders that he is ready to begin. Feng is really confident in his ability, so he says he will be able to defeat Ming with nothing but a single finger. Feng generates an ice spike, which intrigues the leaders because an ice spike is a complex intermediate spell, so he must have worked very hard to master it. Ming moves his head out of the way as Feng launches the ice at him. However, Feng already planned for that, so he takes control of the ice and redirects it. The other leaders are starting to get worried since the ice spike spell is notoriously difficult to control, so Feng might accidentally end up hurting Ming. But Guy says it's fine since this version of the spell can only cause physical pain. Feng realizes the ice spikes won't be enough to break through Ming's defenses, so he decides to conjure a huge ice wall. This forces Ming to go on the offensive, so he pulls out his weapon and begins attacking Feng. The leaders are greatly impressed with Ming's strength, and they had heard that Ming chose to use the ghost cultivation technique for his training. But while the ghost cultivation technique is by no means bad, it limits the growth of an individual later on, so they think he might have been a little too hasty with his decision. However, Ming never actually uses the ghost technique. The technique he got from Ruin is called the Netherbound Cultivation Technique, and it is very similar to the ghost technique, so it would be a good excuse to pretend that he chose the ghost technique instead. And as long as Ming doesn't reveal too much of his power, there's no way any of the leaders will ever realize that he is really using the Netherbone technique. Ming knows he could defeat Feng if he went all out, but that would be too suspicious. So he decides to let himself loose and intentionally get hit with the ice spikes while using the bone shrinking technique to avoid any fatal injuries. After that, he surrenders to put an end to the match, but you recognize the bone shrinking technique, so he is now even more suspicious of Ming. The Masters officially announced the rankings after the tournament, classifying Ming as an upper-middle cultivator and the others as inferior. One of the leaders has taken a liking to Ming, so she calls him over and offers to heal his wounds for him. Ming is thankful for her help, but that's not all she has for him. She also offers him 3 shield talismans, and although Ming isn't sure how valuable the talismans are, he believes that if they come from a master, then they must be good. I appreciate you viewing my anime recap, Unruly Family. Please let me know what you think about this anime recap by liking, sharing, and commenting, and please subscribe to the channel to help us reach 5,000 subscribers.
Take you